a lot has been happening in the AI ecosystem, and in the history of tech, there are only a few occasions when they really feel some defining moments, changing completely the current paths of science and unlocking new opportunities. So just to warm up a little bit the conversation, let me be like really ignorant and ask you, like, is it like a Microsoft like Excel kind of moment where there is an amazing like tool available to us, and people will adjust and sort of like take advantage of that? Is it these like changing moments?
Yeah, I think we are dealing with a new general purpose technology, talking more about AI and generative AI, in my opinion. And so I would say a lot of different industries will be disrupted by this. What we try to do with PandasAI is actually, yeah, the new Excel kind of. It's a totally different experience. But what I want to focus on is the fact that it's not just about adding a conversational layer on data analysis. This is one thing. This is cool. And what it really does is it leverages the capabilities of mimicking human reasoning that LLMs have natively, and then it empowers the library to do more advanced data analysis. Basically, that's the idea. So it's not just about adding a new interface or adding a new way to explore data. It's also having the reasoning capabilities and learning this kind of capabilities, I would say.
Yeah.
Awesome. So that's there is an element of democratization, and I would say also inclusivity into the data experience. So that's kind of the new way that we're probably going to interact with data, and I think that's very interesting. So it's not all just the data, but also the sort of the way we're going to approach data in the future. So maybe let's dig deeper into that.
Yeah, I think as I said, like it's a new technology that is basically allowing us to do things that we couldn't do in the past. It's basically now barriers are way lower than they used to be for everything. So the knowledge and the information is way more accessible than it used to be. So with this new interface, which is the conversational interface, I think we can literally do data analysis without having the real skills for doing data analysis. This doesn't mean that we will be replacing the data analyst or the data scientists or data engineers. This is not going to happen. It's just going to change the way they work. It's definitely going to empower them to do 10x the things at I don't know 10x the 10x the things at in 1/10 of the time, I would say. And that's one thing. The other thing is that, of course, it will disintermediate them in a lot of different tasks, in particular the most repetitive ones, which are about data extraction, the very common data exploration where you don't really do rocket science. All these things will probably be disintermediated. Data analysts will be disintermediated in those activities. Letting, for example, like business people, business analysts, or other people within the company doing that. At the same time, it will boost the productivity of data analysts by letting them, do more high-level tasks like training models, for example, and understanding, the correlation between different metrics in the company and so on and so forth. So yeah. That's kind of it, I would say.
So if I may, let's this is very interesting, Gabriele, and brings me to the next question. So let's take a step back, right? So in a sense, there is a common feeling that AI, generative AI, LLMs are a new platform. As it was computing, it was the internet, as it was mobile, right? If this is true, there were two big players, the closed source world, so the companies developing commercial products, and the open source world contributing to the growth of all of these platforms in one way or the other. How so you took a clear road with Pandas AI. How do you see that road, the open source one, impacting this new platform? And what's your view about that?
I think what we are seeing is a clear trend towards open source. We have seen in particular, I mean, not even considering Pandas AI, I would say like Mistral AI or similar. These companies have a core that is open source. So basically they fundraised with the idea of making 90% of their discoveries and their builds and whatever they comes out of their research, making it open source. So I think this is a clear trend, and I think we will see more and more of it coming. Of course, also the closed source has its own advantages, because basically OpenAI stopped publishing about their new finding in the research most of the times. I mean, I don't remember how long ago it was their latest relevant paper, but I think it's more than 1 year old, I would say. And if you consider that, I don't know how, the figures, but I think most of the real research in Gen AI is done within OpenAI. So it's kind of impressive that they don't publish anything, So I think, of course, there will be this contraposition, I would say, but I think the open source is here to stay, and is really here to challenge the closed source. Also because basically it creates the foundations to then build on the top of that your own implementation that is maybe tailored for one specific use case. And this is something that you cannot really do with the closed source version, because of how many different topics are out there that you should cover, and how many different use cases. So it's more of a work between generalist versus specialist. Now, maybe in the generalist part, closed source will win. In the specialist part, I think open source is gonna be an easy bet. So that's my take, I would say.
Yeah, that's interesting. One of the key issues that always arises around open source is about business model and sustainability of the company developing, or the aggregation operators developing the product. How are you addressing that with PandasAI? How do you see going forward with the LLM ecosystem? I mean, there are fixed costs there, right? If you are an LLM particular layer, you have costs for just running your infrastructure. So how do you see it evolving, and what's your vision with PandasAI?
Yeah, I think that this is a very good question. This has been there since the very beginning, the very early days in the open source. It's not something new. Basically, as an open source company, what you have to do is setting a threshold. So until which is the threshold, where things are still free, and when do we start charging for additional things? In our case, what we believe is important is that we want everything that comes out of the research to make, or if not everything, 90% of what comes out of our internal research open source, because this is super important. We really want to bring the advancement that we can build internally to everyone, to a broader audience. What we want to make closed source is basically a couple of killer features that are not relevant for most of the people out there, which can use the underneath technology. But there are killer features for specific targets that and they are worth an insane amount of money for only a very few people, and that's exactly what we want to do. So we want it to be open for 99.9% of the people out there, and and making a sustainable model thanks to the 0.1% out there, I would say.
Let's talk about big models versus small models a little bit. I mean, you kind of anticipated a little bit these elements, saying there's going to be specialized models and bigger models. So what is your take on that? And is it a dichotomy that's gonna stay, or there will be a point where of complete divergence, or maybe some like either one or the other is going to disappear? What is your take on that?
I mean, I think until we rely on the current technology, which is transformers, I wouldn't say this will disappear unless we really find a new way to build this kind of LLMs, and then it's a different game. But until we have transformers, I think that there will be generalist models and specialist models that will be probably smaller. The reason is we will need, in my opinion, a generalist model for B2C customers. Like, you have a B2C that wants to have an answer that is good enough for literally any questions. And in this case, the generalist model makes a lot of sense. And then apart from that, we will see generalist, like bigger and generalist models wherever we need to orchestrate something, So for example, if I have to understand literally every specific query, then I want a bigger model, because the more knowledge I put in the model, the more the model is aware of the world out there, And so this is very important. In these cases, when we want to orchestrate, it's very important to have bigger models most of the times. However, when you want to do more specific tasks, like for example, data extraction, or you want to do, for example, data analysis, or you want to generate code, or you want to, do specific tasks for which you fine tune a model, in those cases, a smaller model is usually a better option because, for example, you can, it's faster to get the inference, your inference in fewer seconds, and then it's way cheaper, and so it doesn't make sense to have a trillion tokens models out there, well, to do a very small and easy task, I would say. So I think it's here to stay, this kind of divergence.
And to follow up on that, this is, and I'm asking from a very ignorant perspective standpoint, so I can be mistaken. I believe that also relate with the sort of a RAG framework. So the fact that there is this a quick system of actually using AI after a very specific search of the correct information. On top of that, on top of which actually the AI can actually work on, and that's kind of a leaner and easier way to get to the task in a faster way. So, am I correct? Is that something that is related?
Yeah, if you mean RAG, I think they're doing a lot of things, like a lot of steps forward. So basically, what they do is they search with the normal algorithm or vector DBs or similar. They search for information that we know are accurate. We pass to the LLM from several sources, maybe, and then we just let the LLM orchestrating answer that is meaningful and is very unlikely to be hallucinated, and also puts together all the different dots, let's say. So this is definitely one way to fix the hallucinations problem. So yeah, I think this is a very nice improvement, and also has another great advantage that you can narrow down the context that you pass to the LLM, because basically, if you pass a bigger context, there are papers out there that show clearly that, for example, you lose the context in the middle. So for example, if you have a 100K context length, and basically as humans, we are biased in a way that we tend to put the emphasis at the beginning and at the end. So everything that is in the middle is kind of irrelevant. So basically, by training with human produced data like this, the LLM is trained in a way that everything that stays in the middle is not taken into account most of the times, and RAG kind of fixes this, because basically you only pass something that is super relevant and short. You have a way shorter context thanks to that.
there are all these new techniques coming up around LLMs, and my understanding is RAG is one alternative-ish to fine-tuning a model. That again, in my understanding, is by making a model a bit more of a commodity, because you don't have to invest resources into tuning a model on your data. You just have an external source of data, and you can switch the model that you want to use on your data. So it goes in a direction where the model is less important than the data, by dividing the two rather than putting the two together. So is it correct?
I think it's I would say partially correct. Let's say basically the knowledge in the model is less and less important because you pass in context knowledge all the time. But I wouldn't say it's like a perfect replacement for fine tuning. You fine tune for several reasons. Sometimes because you want to additionally shorten the input so that it's faster to inference. Or for other things, like you want the output to be in a specific way, or you want to teach some reasoning processes or stuff like that. So fine-tuning is here to stay. I think it's complementary. So you do RAG for passing the context, and then you fine-tune the model to getting to know how to use the context that you pass, I would say. So it's two different and complementary techniques. Of course, RAG sometimes makes less important fine-tuning if you fine-tune just for knowledge.
So that's about behavior versus knowledge.
Let's maybe switch a little bit gear and talking about defensibility of the new up and coming AI companies and startups actually coming out. Big problems on the horizon. Number one, the fact that the bar, the accessibility to actually build a company upon AI is becoming literally like easier and easier by day. So every day is kind of easier. So the question is, how can you build meaningful businesses with this technology in a way that actually you can defend your own way of doing business? And I know that you kind of are, you're like pushing the idea that one thing is just building one app, one thing is actually giving value through AI. So I think that's a very interesting concept. So if we can talk about that.
Yeah, sure thing. I think, I want to start by telling that, you have already partially mentioned, but I think there's one thing where defensibility is in trouble. And that's the thing where you want to leverage the new technology to sell this technology itself to enterprise companies. So if you only want to sell the technology compared to the previous general purpose technology, is so harder to do that, because it's so easy to implement Gen AI in your workspace that then you don't need a fancy startup out there to help you doing that in most of the cases. Now, talking about real defensibility, I think as I said also in the past, the key is always the same. The defensibility you build with a product. So if you build a product, including generative AI, but not limited to generative AI, for example, then the defensibility, it doesn't really change the rules, because the toughest part when you do a startup is actually finding something people want. That's the idea. So if you make something people want, chances are that you will build defensibility, and that's the same old game. Nothing has really changed. There's this topic about these thin wrappers, prompts basically built on the top of OpenAI. These are not defensible, but have never been defensible, because basically you cannot really build a whole business on the top of a prompt that relies on a technology that is not controlled by you. So you don't control the technology. You don't even control the platform now that you are building probably GPTs or things like this. So what's the real value that you're bringing? Maybe just a prompt, a few lines of instructions. I don't think it's enough. But this is not a product, in my opinion. A product is something that is a combination of UX, people using it, getting to know how they use it, getting to know what they expect from this product. So I think it's way bigger than that. And I think this is where defensibility comes in, when you are really building a product and not just a feature on top of a nice technology, I would say.
Yeah, so the analogy, some people have been trying to make an analogies between, like, the App Store and the iPhone, and sort of the GPTs, like a marketplace with ChatGPT. Doesn't sound like the same, doesn't feel like the same. I agree. It's like building GPTs, can be like on a private basis, can actually work and be very useful. But if Nicola and I would build our own like GPTs with our own prompt and uploading the right files, is it a viable company? I don't think so. I think I'm leaning toward your position. What is your take on GPTs? Let's maybe talk about that for a second.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of posts on LinkedIn and similar where a lot of people is talking about the new Apple App Store moment, and I had read exactly the same posts when plugins were launched on ChatGPT, but no one, or almost no one, is using plugins nowadays. And I think after some hype, even using GPTs won't be a thing. I mean, yeah, of course, there will be like a niche using GPTs, but I don't think it's like the real game changer. The problem with GPTs is that basically they, as I said, it's just a prompt, So I don't really see the the value. It's one application built on the top of the same generalist model that is not the specialist. So it's, again, generalist versus specialist. If you want to build something that is a specialist, you don't train a GPT, which is not even training, but it's prompt tuning probably. But you just create a new LLM or a new ecosystem specifically built with that problem space in mind, I would say.
Yeah.
So defensibility really boils down to owning your own LLM at the end of the day. I mean, building on top of someone else, that's probably the risky. Okay, it's easier, it's more accessible, it's more democratic. 100%, I can do it, and I'm not a technician, but that doesn't give me like an edge. The edge comes from the actual model. Is it where you're leaning toward?
I think the edge comes from the technology, the community, a lot of different things, So the model is one part of the technology. You can say, okay, I want to build a product using other startups' model. That's fine. You don't really need to have your own model, but you need to control at least part of the technology. Otherwise, there's literally no defensibility. And then it's about community. You have to build a community of users loving your product. And if you build that, I think it's the same instructions of when you were running a business before Gen AI. So again, sorry for being repetitive, but I think this is the key.
Interesting. I also wondered, like, what's your take on building product for a direct customer versus building product for enterprise? So sometimes it's a dichotomy, sometimes it's overlapping. What's your take on that? Like, do you think that AI is gonna be like more successful in one or the other?
I think it's a tough take. I think talking about defensibility, it's easier if you build for enterprises, because you just have to find a specific problem and that is not easily reproducible. The problem when you do a B2C with this technology is that literally you can have the giants training their super huge trillion tokens models to do the same, and the chances are they will do better. So everything that is B2C, B2C is a market where it matters a good enough approach. So if it's good enough, like I've seen back in the days, a lot of people trying to do AI travel assistant agents or something like that, and then GPT, ChatGPT can do it almost instantly. Or all these kind of B2C things are quite easy to reproduce. While if you build a real product for enterprise customers, I think it comes with more defensibility, because it's a more niche problem and more niche space. But then when you master it, that's how you get defensibility, maybe to some extent.
Awesome. Let me maybe challenge a little bit you by quoting yourself to you directly. So I have this quote: "Conversational interfaces are not necessarily the future. OpenAI's own usage data for ChatGPT shows declines after initial hype. A clickable UI can often be more efficient than typing sentences." I love that, because it's just saying, it's all about interaction. The backend can really work in different ways, but a winning strategy can really, rely on the fact that people rethink the way we interact with the platform. So very, very powerful. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of confusion between generative AI and conversational. I mean, conversational is something that is made possible by generative AI. It was already possible, let's say, but now it's way more powerful, let's say. However, a lot of people tend to confuse it with generative AI. Generative AI is mostly about the reasoning capabilities. Not that the model is capable of reasoning, but it's capable of like writing or mimicking a human reason. And this is where we really get value out of generative AI. So leveraging that, you can create a old interface with buttons, or of course it's more customizable. So you can have a button, and then you can briefly describe what you expect, and then it can be a hybrid interface, I would say, but not necessarily everything about the chat. Where you just chat and you do this kind of back and forth. Maybe you just fill in a form. There are some open fields, and you leverage these open fields together with some drop down menus and so on and so forth. You pass it all to the LLM, and then you get the output. This kind of combination, I think, has to be taken into account. So it's not just going to be a chat. It can be sometimes chat, sometimes just structured data that you pass, and then you get what the user expects to get, let's say.
Interesting. So I was also reading about, what I thought as of sort of reverse prompt engineering, when essentially they're training AI to actually ask people question just like directly at the beginning of all the interaction before even you get a prompt, ready. So that's kind of for gathering and better task recognition. So maybe also there will be like more proactivity on the side of the AI, instead of vice versa, where we actually need to come up with a prompt and then interact. So maybe there is also this other dynamic where we're becoming more passive, and the AI does all the heavy lifting, even in the prompt phase.
The Socratic approach, the AI will be the one extracting the prompt from us.
Yeah, no, totally. I think this is going to be the future. One of the things, sometimes these GPTs seems dumb, because every time you have to instruct them and to say, okay, you have to do this, then you have to do that. Showing some kind of a proactivity or proactiveness, let's say, is definitely something good. So okay, you ask me this, but I know that I can reason, and I can tell you, okay, as a follow up, do you think I should do like this, or can I also do that? This is what is really missing in the current chat interface, and that's why it's kind of broken at the moment. And I think it's going to be very, very better in the future, and I'm super excited to see what the new developments will show us.
Awesome. All right, so let's touch a very controversial topic, which is sort of, it always comes up when new technology happens, which is it gonna replace jobs? Is the AI a bad thing for like people, because then people are gonna get fired and be substituted with AI, and so on and so forth. So what's your take on this one?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I've heard this thing like tens of times in the past 20 years. I remember a few years ago it was Amazon, the evil character everywhere, like no one is gonna work because everyone will be bought on Amazon. Then turns out that it didn't happen, and it created even more job opportunities. So I would say, of course, there will be some jobs that will be totally disrupted, and by that, I mean that unfortunately, some jobs won't be needed anymore, or we would need, I don't know, 10% of the workforce to do the same things. That's a given, and that's sad. However, that's also the progress, So at the end, it's always been like this since thousands of years. But the good news is that this thing will also create a lot of new job positions, maybe even more high level. So I think at the end it's gonna be like always, probably we will lose some jobs in the customer care, but we will have more engineering positions, for example. So I think this is gonna change. We will lose. I think some artists will have to change the way they work. Doesn't mean that as an artist you will lose a job, but you will need to adapt to these new technologies. And at the end, it's going to be like a new tool for them to use, and to make even better art or even more creative art, let's say. So I think it's going to destroy some jobs, create some others way more than the ones that will be destroyed, and transform, like deeply transform all the others that are missing. Yeah.
What are maybe some of the non-obvious jobs that will be created? Because it's easy to maybe think about, okay, my friend, the data analyst that does like data entry, of course, this guy has no chance whatsoever. So what's the equivalent on the high side?
I think
Can I build on that one? Can I build on that one, Gabriele? Because I think this is important.
sure. Sure thing.
Let me explain. Let me explain the question. I mean, some technology can be somewhat knowledge destroying. Stupid thing. Think of Google Maps. Before Google Maps, you had to know the streets, study the streets, then enter Google Maps. I have no idea how the streets work in Milan or anywhere I go. I'm thinking about professions when there is a learning curve to get to being proficient. Developer, lawyer. If you are really supported by technology, there might be lower demand for junior people in those areas. What do you think about it? So can the demand for certain type of junior profiles, because junior profiles can be substituted by technology, can that have an impact in the medium term? Can that destroy something, some kind of knowledge, what do you think?
I think definitely in the short term. So in the short term, we will see a lot of this happening. Even though you mentioned developers, I think I don't know how it's gonna evolve, but now I can't imagine like anything like a LLM replacing a developer, not even a junior, because it's not working. I've tried a tons of different tools, but it's not working like that. It's more of a as you have seen, like there are tons of copilots out there. Why copilots and not autopilot? Because everything that is auto is out of control, and you don't really know where it's going. So at the moment, it's just empowering people to speed up their jobs. So I don't really know whether it's going to destroy some junior position or empower these junior people to learn faster, because maybe they have such tools, so they will be more proficient over in less time, So I don't really know. I think the real question then is who is responsible for that if you have something running on autopilot without control, So at the end, you might want these junior people to be more responsible, maybe, and so I don't have a clear bet in here. I just believe that, yeah, of course, some professions that unfortunately were very it's like the thin wrappers that they mentioned. If they didn't have defensibility, so they are quite easy to disrupt, and those professions will be disrupted. Yeah, exactly. All the other ones, I think, will benefit. Maybe, I don't know, in 5 years from now, we will have really autonomous agents, and then the thing is going to be different. I'm just talking to the current technology. But I think I see a lot of limitations. There's this trend of AGI out there. In 2 days we'll achieve AGI. I don't think so. I might be wrong, but I don't think so. I don't think with the current technology we can achieve AGI. And until we achieve AGI, this is just a super cool technology that empowers people to move 10x faster. So maybe you can stretch the workforce, let's say, but not replace junior developers or junior lawyers or something like that.
Interesting. So that's more of an augmentation of skills instead of really substituting jobs. So yeah, I mean, Nicola and I, we always talk about that, like saying how AI is actually, a good thing, because then raises the bar for everyone. And the other element is that nobody's immune to AI. So there will always be some application in your field. So nobody's really like protected and insulated from whatever AI is developing. So that's definitely something to consider, I think. Let's talk about like how maybe the machine learning sort of like a professional should approach like down the road, the like their own profession. Like what's next? What's gonna happen for the professionals in the field? What do you see from your perspective? What is changing? What is gonna change? Where should people focus to actually get involved in the edge, in the latest technologies?
Yeah, I think there are, and there will be in the future even more, a lot of different interesting things about ML that is not just LLMs and generative AI. But I think now let's stick to LLMs. I think understanding the technology behind LLMs, the transformers, the encoder, decoders, and so on and so forth, is becoming more and more necessary. What I mean, in the past few weeks, I'm talking to a lot of ML engineers, and most of the times, the only thing that comes out is that they know how to fine tune a model. But basically, the problem is that like literally everyone that looks that watch a YouTube video, 1 hour YouTube video, can really learn how to basically fine tune a model. Let's say, something like that. There are even no code and low code tools helping that. Why I'm telling this, I think it's important to understand the technology, because you need to know how to build models from scratch, even smaller models. To really understand what quantization is. If you use quantization, quantization basically is a technology to round the weights of a model to have less precision, but overall the precision is almost the same, it's comparable. So the quality of the model is almost the same, but it's way faster, So these kind of things are super important. So not just how to fine tune a model, like getting the data and just fine tune it, but also understanding how to fine tune without putting bias in it, how to fine tune to increase the determinism if needed, and so on and so forth. So all these different things are challenges by themselves. And exploring these problems is something that I think I really hope we will see more and more in ML engineers and LLM engineers and NLP engineers.
So you mentioned also, the idea of copilot. So I would go there now. Everything seems to have a copilot of some sort. So from literally like Microsoft announcing copilot for Microsoft Word, to actually specific copilots for academia, for academic researcher. I'm kind of trained on papers, trying to actually support you as you do your own like technical research. So a lot of interesting things and a lot of very, very like application that are perfectly in line with what you were mentioning, which is like 10xing the productivity of some sort. So what is your take there on copilots? Is it how we're gonna work, we're gonna learn, we're gonna do everything?
I think copilots, it depends. Like if by copilot we mean chat assistant, I think at some point we will be really overwhelmed by all these different chat assistants. There will be one chat assistant for research, but I mean, if literally each of us will need, I don't know, 10 or 20 different chat assistants, then you don't even know anymore who you are or what you're talking to, So I think copilots are nice, but what I really hope we will see more and more is experiences that are Gen AI ready and with like a generative AI from the very foundation level of the product itself. So as I was mentioning in the past, I really see these copilots evolving in actual products where you have chat experience as only a very tiny part of the experience, but like the real product is where you get the value. And talking about one thing that you mentioned, this kind of proactiveness, I think we will need to see this more and more over time, because I really envision a thing where the copilot already has done the job for you, and you just have to double check and ask for modifications and so on and so forth. But this is the real value that I think we will need to get out of copilots, or however they will evolve. Again, I don't think it's going to be a full chat experience, but it will be partially chat, but also like a dashboard, or this new merge of all the new technologies, all the new UI and UX, I would say.
Mm-hmm. So there will be some some merging, some new UI where there are actually some predefined like task to be made, and then you can sort of go deeper, and then the AI will do most of the job, and the heavy lifting left to the human is really to check on the work and maybe dig deeper together with the assistance of the AI. So yeah, I like this idea of like this mixture of a new and old like way to interact with the AI actually. So that's very interesting. So there are some obvious application of Copilot in general. So I've been playing a lot with especially one particular one, which is I'm gonna advertise it for free, called SciSpace. Basically, they help a researcher to actually dig into papers, and they get to the point where you can actually upload like a mathematical formula in like with a screenshot, and then the AI will actually explain to you in simple terms how an integral is working and why you have a certain variable in place. So that's extremely helpful, and I can see exactly where that's going. Also, depending on what you were saying, there are already in like some prompt that are the most used one. Like, okay, what is the conclusion of the paper? What is the relevant research upon which this paper relies on? So yeah, definitely that's something which is coming. What do you think is maybe the most advanced application of a copilot that you've seen? Like, have you seen anything which is like mind blowing and which is really worth taking a look?
I think so for software engineers, definitely GitHub Copilot. It's been one of the first Copilot, and I think it's the one that works the best, the better I have seen, like the best Copilot I've seen. Now the reason is a lot of fellow engineers will criticize that it's not perfect, it's not maybe optimal for each and every code generation that he does, and I of course I totally agree. But on the other hand, I think it's quite impressive the real boost in productivity it brings. And what is very, very nice, in my opinion, is the fact that it's fully integrated in the experience. So it's not that you have to chat and ask to generate the code, and then you have to copy and paste, and then, so on and so forth. But you just ordinarily type your code, and as you type, it precompiles and suggests, hey, based on the context that I've seen, this is what you should do. So this is why, in my opinion, is impressive. Not in the quality that sometimes is nice, sometimes is not as good, but because it's fully integrated in my previous experience. I mean, to use this kind of copilot, I don't have to significantly change the way I use I do my job, and so I think we will see more and more of these examples coming. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So, from your vantage point, what is next? What is coming? What's happening in the horizon? What do you see that we definitely need to pay attention to? What is that?
I think a couple of points are super interesting at the moment, at least to me, which are explainability. One of the biggest issues with LLMs is that it's black box. I mean, you don't really know how we got to an output, So finding some kind of better way. I mean, one problem was hallucination is now partially solved with RAG, but now we still have this issue with explainability. So we don't really know the process that brought the LLM to the solution. So this is gonna. I think a lot of efforts will be done towards this direction in particular, because a lot of enterprises really need to know. They cannot blindly trust of whatever output, but they really know to, kind of being able to reverse engineer the way they got to this output. And that's one thing. The other thing I think it should be enforced is the determinism of the LLMs. One point of the LLMs is that it tends to hallucinate sometimes, but also it's not very coherent. It doesn't have a system of values, I believe in this, I believe in that, and so I'm coherent, and every time I give you an answer, is coherent to my values. This is a problem, because if I ask the same question 10 times to the LLM, I will get very likely different results, not always the same, and this is a problem. Just to give you a perspective about a bias, if you ask an LLM to evaluate A or B, based on how the LLM has been trained, you will tend to prefer A over B, or vice versa. For example, if I remember correctly, GPT 3.5 prefers the second option, and GPT-4 prefers the first option. Just to give you, so it's biased on the first or the second, and that's a huge problem. So until we really get to, to a point where we don't have such things in place, I think it will be hard to see a lot of uncontrolled LLMs in production.
Let's talk about unlearning. So everybody obsessed about putting more data and information in the AIs, but what about removing strategically certain amount of data? So I thought there was a very, very insight that you were suggesting. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I'm not the maximum expert of this, but tons of paper are popping out every day. In particular, I think Google is focusing a lot of effort into this. Is putting a lot of effort into this. The problem is mostly for different things. Sometimes because you might have wrong data having trained the LLM, and this is definitely one problem. But in other cases, you might have like a lawsuit because, for example, a person like, I don't know, an artist or a writer or something like that has some, protected things like copyrighted material that has been used to train the LLM, and in case this person, of course, doesn't agree to, since they didn't give you their consent, they might want to ask you to remove this material from your data set. But of course, you can retrain the whole model, and that's where this kind of new machine learning techniques are popping out, I would say. And this is particularly, in particular, the case for diffusion models, where we see the ones for generating images in particular. So some artists have a very unique style, and they don't want you to be able to reproduce it with any LLM, for example, or in this case, diffusion model. And that's where we are seeing a lot of machine learning. Another use case in which they're using is to remove biases. So, for example, if it's biased, like the LLM is biased because of I don't know, preference for some kind of racist or ethnic group, let's say, or some or it can be for example, there's one bias that LLMs tend to believe that CEO is a man and not a woman, and so on and so forth. So removing all these biases, to remove all these biases might be needed some machine learning or some other technologies. We are very, very at the early days of these new technologies, I would say, but I've seen very interesting researches lately that are coming. Yeah.
All right, so we are heading toward the conclusion. So let's quickly and unfortunately talk about politics. I mean, we need to talk about the elephant in the room. So Sam Altman, for to give some context, because I don't know when people are going to listen to this podcast. So Sam Altman essentially just got hired pretty much by Microsoft, and you were mentioning that that's a massive change for you and for the industry. So let's maybe quickly go into the implication of this element.
Yeah, I think there are two news of this soap opera that we have assisted all over the weekend. Let's say, basically, I think it's a major. It's actually early to talk about this, to be honest, because maybe by the time the people will be listening to this podcast, it will be a completely different scenario. So it's hard to make predictions. However, based on the current thing that we are seeing, probably the most likely thing is that OpenAI will be split, let's say, in 3 different parts. There will be some scientists staying at OpenAI, like I don't know, 1/3 keep staying at OpenAI, 1/3 leaving for Google or similar, or Anthropic, for example, and 1/3 leaving to follow Sam Altman at Microsoft. And this drastically changes the balances. Now we had a player which was OpenAI that was controlling everything. Basically, they were like the pioneer. But if you start spreading all these top talented scientists all over different competitors, a lot of things are going to change. So Microsoft will become even stronger in this AI race, maybe even Google, hopefully for them, because they are not very super well positioned with Gemini 2 and never being released so far. And then there will be this even Anthropic maybe will benefit from this. And then I think a minor percentage of these scientists might even decide to build their own new products and projects. And this is super important and super interesting, because if you think about the fact that Anthropic was born from a fork of OpenAI, so every time there's this kind of disalignment in this huge AI companies or non-profits, then we see a lot of disruption happening. So I'm curious to see how this will evolve in 12 months from now. But this is definitely something that is meant to have a huge impact in the race towards AI, I would say.
Nice take. Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so guys, thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Gabriele, for joining to this into this very interesting discussion. I mean, we would need hours and days to actually dig deeper into different topics. But for now, thank you so much, and I hope we will organize another part 2 of this conversation.
Thank you, Gabriele. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jack.
Sure thing. It's been a pleasure. Bye.